So let's look at the poetry within the play. Once again, my source is the Classic Stage Company. Now, verse or prose. All of Shakespeare's language falls into one of two categories. It's either verse or prose. Prose is what we think of as everyday speech without specific rules regarding the rhyme or the rhythm. Verse, then, can be defined as giving order or form to the random stress patterns of prose. A quick way to tell verse from prose: lines of verse begin with capital letters, while prose will appear in a paragraph form. Now, a blank verse. We saw this when we studied poetry in class, but a blank verse is the standard poetic form Shakespeare uses in his plays. It can also be defined as unrhymed iambic pentameter. That is a line of poetry containing 5, which is penta, iambic feet, not rhyming with any adjacent line. That's 10 syllables altogether. The pattern flow easily for speakers of English because the stresses match the human heartbeat. So listen to this. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. That's the rhythm of an iambic pentameter. Or a good way to remember the word iamb is to think of I am, I am, I am, I am, I am. If you say the Yankees and the Mets are New York's teams, with natural inflection you'll have a spoken line of iambic pentameter. The Yankees and the Mets are New York's teams. So we do this naturally. Here are two more. I take the subway every day to school. I can't go out because my homework's late. So if you listen, and if you try it, I recommend you try it, you'll find that you stress the syllables at the end here. So let's say a line from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Poor Puck says, "My mistress with a monster is in love." So you hear the rhythm. The repeating combination of stressed and unstressed syllables is known as a foot, which is the basic unit of a verse. An iamb is a foot of poetry containing 2 syllables with an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, the da-dum sound. Prose, on the other hand, is the everyday language used then, in Shakespeare's time, and now. Since verse was the conversational method of writing in Elizabethan England, Shakespeare was actually pushing the literary boundaries by including prose in his plays. At first glance, it may seem that Shakespeare used verse and prose to indicate a character's status, either rich, powerful, educated characters, they spoke in verse, the poor, the common fools spoke in prose. But upon closer look, you may find that many characters go back and forth between verse and prose, so they do so at very specific moments in the play. This is the key. Actors pay close attention to when characters speak in verse and when they speak in prose because Shakespeare made these choices on purpose, and they can tell the actor a lot about how the character thinks and feels. So Bottom, our main actor in the play for the wedding, the Rude Mechanicals was the group's name, they speak most of the prose in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Bottom says, "I've had a most rare vision. I've had a dream past the wit of man to say what dream it was. Man is but an ass if he go about to expound his dream. Methought I was, there's no man can tell what, methought I was, and methought I had, but man is but a patched fool if he will offer to say what methought I had." So the Rude Mechanicals speak in verse while performing their play at the royal court, but by contrast, the royals and the lovers respond in prose as they watch the performance. We've got the rhyming verse. Even though most of Shakespeare's plays are written in blank verse, he still makes frequent use of rhyme, especially when he wants you to call your attention to something. Words that rhyme really stand out when we hear them spoken aloud in a play, so the words are of particular importance to the actors. In Midsummer, if you will notice rhyme everywhere, about 44% of this play is written in rhyming verse. We also have irregular verse. Shakespeare doesn't always write verse in perfect iambic pentameter. That's a myth. The rhythmic patterns change, and so does the number of syllables. This was pretty innovative stuff in Shakespeare's day. He was one of the first writers to break form. Just like a change from prose to verse is a clue for the actor, so is a variation of the verse pattern. Okay? So, irregular verse, Shakespeare doesn't always write in oh, sorry. That's the same paragraph as a while ago. So, shared lines and split lines. Here you go. Shakespeare sometimes splits a line of verse so that two characters share the 10 syllables. That's really interesting. This is called a shared line or a split line, and it helps to show quick thinking and strong emotion, as well as creating a sense of accelerated action. So you have Hermia that says, "Do not you jest?" And then you have Helena that replies, "Yes, sooth, and so do you." But all these two lines together make for one iambic pentameter. Really cool. You also have something, I just need you to know that this exists, called feminine ending. So a feminine ending is a line of verse that ends with an unstressed extra syllable. The result is that the rhythm of the verse is thrown off just enough to indicate the character feels unsettled about something. Here's an example, spoken by Hermia as she tries to make sense of her lover Lysander's behavior after he leaves her alone in the woods. So Hermia says, "Since night you loved me, yet since night you left me." So this little extra unstressed syllable here is what makes this a feminine ending. So there are other types of poetry used in this. A trochee is another type of poetic foot. It's a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable in the exact opposite of an iambic tadam, right? So Puck says, "If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended." So you have the opposite. Here you have the stressed and the unstressed. So it's the opposite of an iambic pentameter. So without getting too much into detail, I just need you to know that there is a beautiful art to this play and how it was written.